Europe is in the middle of a devastating heat wave that is bringing record temperatures and, of course, all the problems with it. There are wildfires, for example, in Spain and France that are driving thousands of people to evacuate as firefighters are attempting to try to put out the blaze. Of course, the dry temperatures, or I should say the high temperatures and dry conditions are making it incredibly difficult in a lot of these places to put out these fires. In addition to people that have been killed in these fires, there are also hundreds of heat-related deaths reported in the Iberian Peninsula, as well as triggering wildfires from Portugal to the Balkans. Other places like northern Italy are experiencing extended droughts and dry conditions. In Britain, they've broken records for heat, as well as in France. In fact, one regional fire chief, this is in France, Marc Vermeulen, described tree trunks exploding, shattering as flames consume them, sending burning embers into the air and further spreading blazes. He said, quote, "The fire is literally exploding. We are facing extreme and exceptional circumstances." Now, before I get into more details about how terrible this is and how, yes, it is, the planet is burning, let me just say, for those of you that are saying, oh, this is exceptional, this is unprecedented, you might want to get used to it because this is going to be the coldest summer that we will experience from now on. So you might as well enjoy it because it's only going to get worse from here. In fact, climate scientists are saying the heat waves have become more intense, more frequent, and longer because of climate change. And of course, when coupled with droughts, again, that are exacerbated by climate change, have made wildfires much, much more difficult to fight. They say climate change will continue to make weather more extreme and wildfires more frequent and destructive. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez on Monday said during a visit to the site of one of the three major fires going on in that country, quote, "Climate change kills. It kills people. It kills our ecosystems and biodiversity." Again, 100% true. Teresa Ribera, Spain's Minister for Ecological Transition, described her country as, quote, "literally under fire." As she attended talks on climate change in Berlin, she warned of terrifying prospects still for the days to come after more than 10 days of temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Cooling only moderately at night. In Britain, the Weather Service had forecasted that their record high of 38.7 degrees Celsius or 101 degrees Fahrenheit set in 2019 could be shattered. And guess what? Today it was. They hit 40.2 degrees Celsius. Yikes. Again, over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, before they made this prediction, or when they were making this prediction, this is Met Office CEO Penelope Endersby saying, quote, 41 isn't off the cards. We've even got some 43s in the model, but we're hoping it won't be as high as that. So it still could be even hotter. France's Brittany region hit a record of 39.3 degrees Celsius or 102.7 degrees Fahrenheit, shattering its highs. The Balkans also was expected to have worse of the heat later on this week, so it's not over, but has already seen sporadic wildfires, and again, it's going to get worse. Germany is expecting potentially record-breaking temperatures on Tuesday, that's today, potentially surpassing 41.2 degrees Celsius or about 106.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Europe is literally burning. It is on fire. And yet, are we doing anything meaningful about climate change? No. Understand that our planet is tightly caught up in the grip of a few maniacal billionaires and oil companies. They have paid our politicians to avoid transitioning away from fossil fuels. Now, it is, of course, the people who will suffer, not the CEOs and their cronies, as the planet burns. Now, the EU is still, like most of the rest of the modern industrial nations, are largely dependent on fossil fuels. In fact, in 2020, 22.1% of Europe's energy came from renewable resources. Only 22%. Now, to compare, because here's the thing, 22% sounds bad, but then when you compare it to the United States, well, the United States, renewable energy sources, this is back in 2021, accounted for about 12.2% of total U.S. energy consumption and about 20.1% of all electricity generation. So they're kicking our ass in Europe, and Europe is on fire. Now, of course, Europe has actually hit its targets of 20% from renewables. Now, that is led by the countries of Norway, Finland, Iceland, and Sweden, as well as Austria. Well done. Let me show you, by the way, the graph on that. And again, these are, I believe, numbers from 2020, so these may be a little bit different now. But okay. Yeah, renewable energy in 2020. Again, a lot of these countries have hit their target. Some have exceeded their targets. But again, this is only 20%. Still, you do see a lot of countries that have done fairly well, I guess, in that regard. One of the only countries that didn't, actually the only country on that list that hasn't, is France. Oops. They didn't make their target. Yikes. So, and again, that was 2020. Hopefully things have gotten a little bit better, but still 20%, that's still not what's necessary to avoid catastrophic climate change. The rest of the world, all of the world, has to move quicker. Now, whenever, of course, I say something like that, people will pop up and inevitably say, but China. Okay, well, let's talk about China for a second. China, yes, is literally the largest greenhouse gas producing country. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, again, they do rely heavily on coal, but also they have a gigantic, China's huge, as is their population. So, yes, they do produce the majority of greenhouse gas emissions. However, China is also the largest investor in renewable energy, and it's kicking our asses. In fact, in 2020, it ran about 28.8% of all renewable energy consumption. Interesting. So now, look, the reason that the United States is lagging so badly is because of corruption. We have money in politics. Now, I'm sure, of course, the corruption exists in the EU, I think to a lesser degree than it does in the United States, because in the United States, we have legalized corruption, money in politics. A great example of that is Joe Manchin. He takes millions of dollars in legal bribes and guess what? Has massive personal investments in coal, natural gas, and oil, and sits on the Energy Committee. That is a massive conflict of interest here. A massive conflict of interest. He makes more money off his investments per year than his congressional salary. And it's not just Joe Manchin. Again, he's a great example of the corruption, but that kind of corruption is enabled and legalized by our system. In America, we have legalized this corruption, but in Europe, it seems to be still a little bit more possible for them to be able to invest more and hasten their climate projects. But as always, the issue tends to be more political than anything. And so getting to that, solving the problem of climate change, and really it's not even solving, it's mitigating at this point. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. But considering how at this point, it's going to continue to get worse as we go, in the long run, it's going to end up being cheaper and better if we do these investments now instead of later, as to try to at least mitigate more climate disaster. either way, we're still in for a tough ride, everybody. So buckle up. It's going to get worse.